Hi, my name is Gitte Lindgaard, and I'm a Danish-located Wim Hof Method certified instructor. I have been teaching the Wim Hof Method and the female cycle at the Wim Hof Academy, and now I would love to share this beautiful knowledge with you too. The thing is that in average, a woman bleeds in a total of 6 years. And since the cycle and the female bleeding is seen as one of the 5 vital signs of health for women, that's quite impressive, right? During the menstrual cycle, the female brain experiences a natural fluctuation in hormones. That means that it can affect mood, cognition, and behavior. Before we start, there is another thing we need to take into consideration, and that's the fact that most studies are done on men. This is within the Wim Hof Method, but also worldwide. Why that is quite interesting, and perhaps that's a discussion for another time. But for now, let's leave that and dive into the female cycle. We can see here the female cycle is divided into 4 different sides. There is winter, there is spring, there is summer, and there is autumn. So bleeding is during the winter and ovulation is during the summertime. You can also see mark the days that it lasts. We will work out from this schedule. So the next thing we do is actually divided just in 2. From the bleeding and to ovulation, that's called the sun phase or the follicular phase. From the ovulation until winter or bleeding, that's the moon phase, the luteal phase. In the sun phase, the most dominant hormone is estrogen, and in the moon phase, the most dominant hormone is progesterone. These 2 hormones work very, very differently on the body. Let's dive a little deeper into that. So estrogen is an immune system strengthener and easier flow of dopamine, enhanced sex drive. There is also a cell division and more serotonin, more noradrenaline. And what this does is actually, you can see it as a wave that is like bring the woman out into the world. She's more outgoing, she's more confident. This is like such a boost in her self-confidence, power, energy. It's also an antidepressant. So there is so many things going on for the woman in the whole sun phase where she wants to go out and be this superwoman and face the world. In the middle of summer, there is ovulation. There is a little rising in testosterone, a drop in body temperature. And what's actually really interesting is the ovulation is so powerful that a study was made that showed that females in service profession were actually being tipped more when they were ovulating. So I guess men is also affected by this, right? But let's dive into progesterone. When the female body goes into the moon phase, progesterone will be dominant. It will stop the acceleration of estrogen, which also reduces the chance of autoimmune diseases. It burns fat and decreases the metabolism, stabilizes the blood sugar, and pushes the body against a more parasympathetic state. That means that we go from being this outgoing power woman full of energy, that wave coming out. Now this wave is being withdrawn back in, and we actually want to go deeper into ourselves. There is less serotonin, less dopamine, and we go into this whole different state of being. This really is a time to go inwards. Research suggests that in the moon phase, brain activity in regions responsible for emotional processes is increased. When we go into the late autumn, the progesterone decreases as well. So this means that we don't have the calming effect from the progesterone that was pushing us towards the parasympathetic. We also don't have the energy boost from the estrogen. So this means we are completely without any of these lifters or supporters that the hormone also is. This is when actually the state known for some women, some men knows that as well, as PMS. Premenstrual syndrome refers to the physical and emotional symptoms that some women experience in the lead up to the menstruation. What also happens is that we don't have all of these things that is lifting us or affecting us. So it actually means that females will experience themselves, we can call it more clearly or with more insight. There is 3 states in general of these feeling that women feels when they are in this state, and it is being dramatic, melancholic, or angry. This is often seen as something very negative or something that people make fun of. What it actually shows is what's the underlying feeling, what is the emotional landscape of females. In my experience, for example, women that are angry in this stage are often pleasers in their everyday life. And this is when they actually have the opportunity to feel what's really going on. So there is actually so much for females to dive in and learn about themselves once a month. What a beautiful invitation, right? From fall, autumn, we go into winter. This is the lowest part of the estrogen and the progesterone. Often, or some people will have cramps, bloated, heaviness in the abdomen, and are definitely way more sensitive. This is where you can say we are naked and raw, we are really vulnerable. Some people also, or some women also feel really connected. From all cultures, this is actually when it was said that females will connect with spirit, with earth, and they would have the strongest connection in. But let's also put all of these things together. So let's look at how the Wim Hof Method actually is affected, or the other way around, can affect the female cycle. Let's start by looking at how the female cycle and the way we breathe can also be influenced by the Wim Hof Method. Before we go any further, I think it's important to really make it clear that there isn't made specific studies on this. This is suggestions or things that were figured out in other studies. When we are as female in the sun phase, it's reported that we actually breathe deeper because estrogen is a vasodilator. This makes sense. We are outgoing, we are more sensual, we are feeling the world. So the breath is deep and we feel really connected with our bodies. So the interesting question here is how to guide the breath for females who are in their sun phase. The sun phase, and especially summer, is probably when females are actually most high on their own supply. That means that we could really boost them with some good breath work, right? Let's just give it all. It could be power breathing, it could be multiple rounds of the basic breathing. But there could also be an argument that we actually want to balance them instead, perhaps push them a little towards parasympathetic and have them really come in to their bodies and really relax. But I think the real question is actually not whether to boost or balance, but to ask ourselves, do we want to go against what the body naturally creates? And also this is a tough or rough question because often we will guide females or just everyone in groups. So it is difficult to really take it into consideration where the female is in her cycle. But it's good to have this knowledge and to be aware. And of course, there's also the opportunity that you at some point will do a one-on-one. Let's also look at the breath in the moon phase. There is reports or again suggestion that there is an increased sensitivity to CO2. There is a faster frequency in the breathing pattern and increased breathlessness. That means that we actually breathe as females very different in this phase than we did in the sun phase where the breath were deeper. What's also really interesting is that there is a reports of headaches, restlessness, mood swing, being fatigued, more stress and having anxiety for females during the moon phase. What's really interesting is that we actually don't know for sure if we are hyperventilating because of progesterone and that will give these effects, or if it is progesterone alone that does it, because not doing proper breathing can also give us headaches, restlessness, mood swings, and the feeling of being fatigued or stressed. So there is a lot of things going on here that we don't know. How to breathe in this moon phase is really interesting because, again, there is not enough science to really show what to do, but any awareness here is very well. Also, it's good to note that when females do have cramps or feel bloated or have a heaviness in the abdominal region, it is perhaps difficult to breathe like really deep belly breathing. So be aware to bring the softness and not to push anything. And again, there is like this same consideration as we had in the sun phase. Do we really want to like push people here? We could do beautiful breath work and bring joy and happiness. But again, do we want to go against that inner female invitation of feeling the emotions, and also that some of these emotions might be heavy, but that doesn't mean that they are wrong. So this is also a state where we as instructors should be aware that there can be emotional breakthroughs, and that we of course just embrace them and support our participants. So let's go from the breath and into the Wim Hof Method and the female cycle and how the cold exposure is done or explored. So let's start with saying that there is no concrete evidence or research that strongly correlates to cold exposure. So this is speculations, right? The first thing that's really interesting to see is the conflict of cold exposure producing progesterone. So when you're on your sun phase, you really don't, as a female, want progesterone because that's slowing down or stopping the production of estrogen. This again is not something that we know for sure, but it is something that some will perhaps bring up in your workshops. And also we really don't know enough about it because the Wim Hof Method is also known to have really helped a lot of females getting pregnant or having their fertility back. So we really don't know for sure, but still it's a good thing to be aware of. Another really interesting thing about cold exposure and the female cycle is that during ovulation, the temperature for females will actually drop the core temperature. And in the winter phase, the temperature will slowly rise. That would suggest that it would be way easier for females to do cold exposure during winter, and it will be more challenging to do it during summer. That's what the only looking at the temperature is suggesting, right? But as a female myself, and also talking about this with other participants and female instructors, it's actually the opposite. And perhaps that is a power of the mind thing, because in the summer we are outgoing, we feel confident. This is what, remember back, we were super women, and the cold is amazing, and you have the mindset to really be there and find your peace, where in the winter phase you are way more sensitive and perhaps also bloated and cramped. So really interesting how these things are actually conflicting, right? One explanation could be that there is a decrease of blood flow to the skin because there is increased core temperature, that it makes it seem more cold. What's also really interesting here during the moon phase or late autumn is that when the feelings or like the hormone produced feelings are gone, this is actually, as Wim say, when the cold really is a mirror to the soul, then as females we have the opportunity to let the cold guide us even deeper. So I would say that really forget about time frames here and have females explore what is the cold offering them, perhaps on a more emotional or spiritual point or level. Invite them to really see the cold as a portal or a mirror to the soul. If I were to make one final conclusion, both to the breathwork and the cold exposure and the female cycle, is that Wim's sentence of feeling is understanding is so important here. Everything is individual, and as you can hear, there's loads of things conflicting. Physiological versus emotions versus spirituality, individual understandings of this, and also there will be loads of different cultural things that will be at play here. So feeling is understanding for you, feeling is understanding for your participants as well. So how do you apply the female cycle in your workshop? I don't think it's something that perhaps need to be addressed directly. It can be that you include it in your welcome mail, that if they do bleed while having the fundamentals or whatever you are creating or hosting, that they are welcome to reach out, and that the fact that they are in their winter time or bleeding doesn't mean that they cannot do the breath or go into the eyes. Also, if they do have an emotional reaction, it could be an interesting thing to actually ask them, where are you in your cycle? Another good thing is to just have this basic knowledge, especially men. So when a female perhaps addresses you with issue about the cycle, you will have a better understanding and a better knowledge, right? Also, I think a question that often comes up is females are afraid to bleed in the top. But the thing is, the cold will constrict everything, so it's seldom that they actually will bleed. It could also be a good idea for you to perhaps bring a tampon, have it in your first aid kit. By the way, also good if there is a nosebleed. So just allow yourself to be open. Let's de-taboo the whole female cycle and the bleeding, and be open and keep creating even better and better situations and opportunity for people practicing the Wim Hof Method. Let's keep spreading the love and help people getting more happy, healthy, and strong.